What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and this past weekend I went to my first Yu-Gi-Oh event of 2020, so keep in mind we are still in the same season, the 2019 through 2020 season of Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's still a new year, which is pretty exciting, and I'm not really sure why I went. I was out of town for the 5 days prior to the regional, so I didn't have a lot of time to practice. I was out of town for New Year's Eve, so I wasn't really thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh too much, not even uploading videos, really, and I also, I wasn't really prepared in terms of my deck list. I hadn't really looked at it in a little while, so it's not too different from Pasadena, at least the main deck is. And also, I'm just not a really big fan of this format right now. I think we've been playing against Skystrikers and Orcus for 9 months in a row, so I wasn't really having a lot of motivation to go to this regional, but I still went and it was pretty fun. I built this deck to beat Skystriker Orcus and Skystrikers. Of those two decks, I only took one loss to either of them, so I feel that it's really well positioned against both of those. And my one loss was, it was pretty tough. I had a really fun rematch against Dominic Couch, who I played at the UDS round 10. You might have seen that feature match, and he beat me, unfortunately, after a really long, grueling, really fun though 30-minute game one. Lots of back and forth play, but I made a pretty critical misplay 25 minutes into that match that caused me to lose it. But overall, I feel like this deck is pretty well positioned against the Skystriker Orcus deck and the Skystriker deck. I'm just personally pretty sick of playing against them, but if you want any ideas for your own Altergeist deck against the current meta, if you're playing at locals or if you're going to a regional or something like that in the next couple of weeks, maybe this will help you out. I won't spend too much time on the main deck though, because most of the stuff is pretty similar to Pasadena last month, or a couple months ago. I don't know, I think that was November and now it's January, whatever. So first we have 3 copies of Marionetter, of course, 3 copies of Muleseek, 2 copies of Silk, 1 copy of Faker, the standard lineup here, 1 copy of Conqueree. I did see someone playing 2 of this, and that's not even the craziest idea. It is, I don't know, it's funny for the people that don't play Altergeist, but it feels like people are always trying to play around Conqueree for some reason. They're really scared of it, which maybe means I should play 2, but it is kind of a brick, so we just play the 1. 3 copies of Ash Blossom, which I did almost cut. This is a weird card. I don't actually think this card is that good against Orcus anymore. They just have way too many cards that you can Ash, so you can only Ash 1 of them. If they have 3 of them, it doesn't really make a huge impact there. If you Ash the Harpor, they just have the Nightmare. If you Ash the Nightmare, they just have the Harpor. Sometimes you Ash and Engage, and they just have both of those. But it is really, really good against the Rogue decks, and you want it for the other matchups, so it is probably the best hand trap to main deck right now. I do really like the Orcus variants that are playing a lot of dark hand traps and then a lore, although obviously this deck can't really do that, but it's whatever. For the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Extravagance, the pretty much the best reason to play this deck over other decks out there, especially other rogue decks or other slower decks. This card is just super, super strong. It's pretty much just Pot of Greed. The Banshee doesn't matter at all, so it's really, really solid. I always feel bad for people if you don't have this card. I mean, you certainly still can play Altergeists. You could just play other cards, but nothing really replaces this card and actually does what this card does. And then 2 copies of Duality just sort of evens out your hands. It's still a pretty solid card. It is, I've played this deck a while now, and I've played 2 Duality for a while as well, and I notice as I play more and more, I draw multiples more and more, or draw into the second one with the Extravagance, and it gets kind of rough, but it still is just a very important card, more important than just a one-of that you would play. For the trap cards, we played 3 copies of Personal Spoofing, 2 copies of the Protocol, 1 copy of Manifestation, almost considering bumping this card up to 2 copies, which it's been a while since that, but it is, I don't know, I feel like it's really, really important just for putting damage on the board, and I mean, yes, it's a brick, but it's not always a brick if you have the Spoofing, but I think I'd play 2 Conqueree before I'd play 2 Manifestation, which both sound really crazy when I'm saying them out loud, but I don't know, I feel like the Altergeist deck list right now is, so many of the cards are, staple cards. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of the cards are staple cards that I feel like the Altergeist decks could use some innovation right now, and maybe that playing an extra copy of those cards is a step in the right direction. I don't know, we'll see next format if I want to play this deck and if I want to try to innovate it even more. So this is another part where it's my preparation for this event wasn't super high, but I knew I wanted to main deck all 7 Solemns that are good and come in Ultimate Rare, so we have 3 copies of the beautiful Ultimate Rare Solemn Judgments. These just came out December 5th. Look pretty cool, so I got those. And we have 3 copies of Solemn Strike, which is really, really good as well, and then 1 copy of Warning, which is funny, it's the limited one, but it is much, much worse than the other 2, but it's still a pretty good card. And I think if I was going to this event later on, if I went to another event, I probably would not main deck Warning again. I'm not even sure, was I side decking it at Pasadena? I can't remember if it actually made it into the side deck. I think it did, but this card really is not very good to main deck. If you go second, it's almost useless, for at least these 2 cards cards are actually pretty good going second in certain matchups. Solemn can take out like the Salamangreat Roar sometimes, or the Crescendo sometimes. Strike is just really good all around, no matter when you draw it. But the Warning in particular is pretty bad going second, and it's a lot of life points. I know Judgment is a lot of life points too, but this negates like anything. So Warning isn't that great, but I really just wanted to play at least one time all 7 Solemns as ultimate rares. Hopefully none of them get hit. Maybe, I honestly think that they could unrestrict Warning, and people probably still wouldn't play it over Strike or Judgment. You see a lot of people just not playing Warning at all anyway, so I don't think it would actually like hurt the game. I don't even think people would play it if it was at more than 1 copy per deck. Next up, we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. I actually drew Faker Impermanence a couple times this regional, so that was pretty cool. And then 3 copies of Compulse. This card actually has gotten worse. So there's a spoiler, we're still main deck and evenly match. Compulse actually has gotten worse. I will say that. The main reason is that this card, one of the problems with this deck right now at least, is that it really struggles against the IP opening, because your opponent can just Topologic your entire back row or board, depending on which Topologic they're making. If they make the Zero Boros, you lose everything. If they make the Trisbania, you lose all your back row. And unfortunately, Compulse doesn't really do anything against those cards. This card used to be really good, and it still is like a really solid trap card, but it used to be a lot better when that wasn't happening, because then you could just bounce like the Dingirsu back to extra deck or the Galatea back to extra deck, because the deck the Orcus decks used to just end on like Crescendo and then some cards, but now they're just trying to banish all your cards. So you really need stuff that like can actually activate and not just get set and then just get banished immediately. So Compulse is still very good going first, not so good going second anymore against the current iteration of Orcus. So yeah, as like I just spoiled there, I did main deck 2 evenly match again. This is like a weird card. I don't think this card is super good like in online dueling. You know, I don't play this card when I stream Altergeists, which I did a couple weeks ago before the holidays and stuff. I wasn't really main decking this card because I feel like when you're playing a lot of games and you're playing against a lot of random decks, it's not very good. But this card is particularly good against both Skystriker Orcus and the pure Skystriker deck, as well as even like Salamangreats and other popular decks going second. It is a very strong card. You can do some pretty funny stuff. I know that one time I've mentioned probably, but if you are playing against Salamangreats and they have Roar or Rage and you have Molseek evenly match, you can go summon Molseek, attack directly, and if they Rage or Roar the effect, or I mean Rage to pop it or Roar the effect to send, you can then search Multifaker and then evenly match because you're still in the battle phase, then trigger Multifaker. So that's really strong. That has happened a few times. Didn't happen this tournament, didn't play against any Salamangreats, but I feel like evenly match is really well positioned right now. I actually almost played 3 copies, and keep in mind this card does completely rip apart that IP opening because they're not ending on Crescendo anymore unless they hard draw it or Babel, which are only one-ofs. Sometimes that happens, but I mean, you can't win all the time, right? If they draw the ultimate cards there, it's really rough. But otherwise, if they're just ending on the standard board with like the IP and stuff, you can just evenly match. They usually keep the Babel, and then they only have the Dingirsu with the skeleton, but otherwise you can just do whatever you want. So evenly match I feel is really strong. The idea is that when you go first, your hand is so good because your deck is good going first, you don't actually care about drawing a dead card, and I think in general that does stay true. So evenly match was really good for me at this tournament. And then I main decked the one order. This was going to be side decked for the to main deck a 3rd evenly match, but I decided to main deck it just to like sack some people, and yeah, it's pretty good. So for the extra deck, it's kind of funny, but we'll go through here. We have 3 Hextia, and I have decided, I guess you can kind of see here as we go through the extra inside that one of the reasons you can tell I was unprepared is because this is the first time in a long time I've played mismatching rarities, but I did play 3 copies of Prime Banshee, so we have a Starfoil one in there. I'm convinced that Prime Banshee is a lot better, like way better than most Altergeist players are giving credit. I know I used to play 1, I think at some point I played 0, and then I bumped up to 2 recently, and then I just decided that like there's so many good combos with Prime Banshee that I feel people aren't doing that I am doing or should be doing more, and I think that there's just no other extra deck cards that really matter besides these ones, and I guess Link Kribo, but these are like the main ones. And when you have the Hexias banished, even making Prime Banshees on top of each other is not the easiest thing. It's not as easy as just making Hexia because these are Link 3 monsters, but it still is really solid. But the main combos that I'm normally doing are summoning Hexia and then summoning Prime Banshee and then making another Hexia with the Prime Banshee. Just really kickstarts all your major combos. So I really like the 3 Hexia. This pretty much ensures that you won't banish all of those with Extravagance banish, and that never happened. So I liked playing 3 copies. Call me crazy or whatever. And obviously if you're playing Super Poly or Crackdown, you really can't afford to play 3 copies, but I'm not playing either of those cards, so I think it's perfectly fine. And then we have 3 copies of Link Creepo, 3 copies of Almirage, I guess. I don't know. It's whatever. The extract doesn't matter. And then we have 1 Phoenix for some reason, 1 Cerberus to kill the Nibiru token, and then I played a Borlo Dragon. These last 3 cards like really don't matter at all. I think the Phoenix is like okay, and the Cerberus I guess could come up, but realistically, like you never make these cards. You are pretty much only ever making these 9 cards. These other ones just don't really matter in most cases, but you just want them in there. I mean, you need to play 15 extra cards for the extravagance, but mostly you're just making Link Creepo, Hexia, and Prime Banshee. And you should be making, anytime that you would be doing the normal like double Hexia combo, you should now be weaving in a Prime Banshee. Makes the combo so much better. You end on so much more. It's just really, really solid. For the side deck, okay, so you can, I'll address this first. Okay, so I didn't really know what to play as a 15th card, and you know, I have to keep the moral support in there, so I did side deck 1 copy of Sang, and the idea conceptually, I think really it's just like superstition. I think I'm just going to stop playing this card because obviously I didn't do very well this tournament, but so Sangan wasn't good enough moral support. But the idea was when you go first against random decks, you don't want the evenly match in there, and when you were playing against meta decks, you have like other cards you can side in going first. When you go first against just like random stuff you're not prepared for, you need to be able to side out the evenly matches. You need a generic card to side in, and originally it was Warning and Order, but then those cards went into the main deck, and I was like, whatever, I'll just play the 1 Sangan. But you really shouldn't play this card. You probably should just play like a 3rd copy of any of these cards. But we have 2 Nibiru. Actually, you know what, scratch that. You probably shouldn't play 2 Nibiru. This card is only for specific matchups. It's not really for Orcus decks. It's not really for, Sky Strikers, obviously, but it is very good against like Salad and Thunder and stuff like that. It's kind of like iffy against Pendulum, whatever, because they just summon Jackal. But I probably wouldn't play a 3rd copy of Nibiru. I'd probably just play a 3rd Secret Village. But we did play 2 Nibiru, and it was fine. It wasn't fantastic, but it was fine. I played 3 System Down, so I don't know, I watched a lot of deck profiles, I looked at all the deck lists, it looked like a lot of people really like System Down, and it makes sense. So we have 3 System Down, and then the 3rd evenly match as like the 6 cards that you can draw going second that are just complete blowouts against the IP opening. So you have the when you go second against the Orcus Skystriker deck, you can open any of the System Downs or any of the evenly matches. Usually it breaks the opponent's entire board, but just by 1 activation, which is really, really solid. The thing with Lancia and the thing with like other hand traps is that like you have to draw them, and it has to be like, it just has to end their turn. This isn't really a tempo deck, and sometimes when you Lancia and it ends their turn, like, you don't actually accomplish anything on your next turn, so they can just banish all those cards anyway. So what I like about Evenly Match and System Down is that it just deals with everything immediately, and then you're just free to do whatever you want. Not too much pressure there, but I like these cards a lot. We played 2 copies of Secret Village. This is really good. So when you go first against the Striker Orcus deck, you side in these, and you side in the 3 copies of Imperial Iron Wall. I don't like, okay, so this is like another example of why I don't like this format, but I don't really like formats where I feel like I have to play Floodgates and Altergeists. If you guys have seen my, especially like this past season, I really have sort of gone away from playing Floodgates and Altergeists because I feel like Altergeists shouldn't need them if you actually want to play them, unlike the other decks like Guru Control and stuff like that. But Imperial Iron Wall is actually really solid right now. It obviously stops all the Orcus effects, but it stops like Cosmic Cyclone, it stops Evenly Match, stops all sorts of stuff, so I like Iron Wall. It was okay. I didn't really draw it that much. Honestly, the Secret Village is like almost as good, really, like against Orcus Striker when you go first, but Secret Village is obviously better going against Pure Striker. But Iron Wall is pretty good right now, so if you are playing Altergeist, I would definitely recommend playing this card. I think even someone topped, where I got the idea from, was he was main decking 2 copies, which if I thought I was going to win more dice rolls, maybe I would have main decked 2 copies, but I just went with the Evenly Matches, which were pretty strong as well. And then the last 3 cards were 3 Heavy Stormduster. I'm not so sure about this card. I don't know. It's kind of weird right now. I think that Pankratops actually would have been better in like most of the situations where I was side decking this card, just because it's like a big monster that I feel like I needed sometimes. But I mean, popping 2 back row is like better than popping 1. It's just the 2600 attack can be really valuable against bigger monsters, so it's kind of weird. But I mean, I play against the Guru Control, and I can't remember if I drew this card, but I definitely beat that deck pretty easily. I mean, he didn't draw like the best hand. I'm not a big fan of Guru Control, if you guys know. I don't think it's as consistent as Altergeist, but it is still a pretty valid option. But this card's obviously really good against decks like that and like Paleo and stuff along those lines. Anyway, though, that's pretty much gonna wrap up my deck profile. This is pretty much the only event I've been going to in January, so don't expect a deck profile for a little while. Really hoping for a ban list before next month, because then next month we have we got a new set coming out. We got regionals, we got the UDS, we got a YCS, a team YCS. So I'm really excited for the upcoming weeks, but hopefully we just get a new ban list so that I can actually start brainstorming for those upcoming events, because any of the brainstorming that I do right now likely won't matter in a few weeks. Anyway, though, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.